Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, it's all about Willow. Willow! The 1988 fantasy film Willow is definitely one of my favorite movies of all time, and anyone who engages me in a conversation about movies knows that I end up turning into a Willow Jehovah's Witness, and I'll try my best to convince you to watch it if you haven't already. Willow is one of the greatest fantasy movies of all time! It's such an underrated fantasy film, and it really did open up the door for modern day fantasy films. From the mind of George Lucas and directed by Ron Howard with an absolutely beautiful music score by none other than the great James Horner, we follow a reluctant Nelwyn named Willow, played by Warwick Davis, who is tasked with protecting a special baby from an evil queen. He makes some friends along the way, like a daikini named Mad Mardigan, played by my boyfriend Val Kilmer. As wicked as the movie was, the accompanying toy line, that's such a weird word, the accompanying toy line was not so wicked. In fact, in the collecting realm, it's actually known as one of the worst toy lines ever made. For some reason, the rights were given to Tonka, perhaps following their success from the GoBots and Pound Puppies line, or that in 1987, Tonka acquired Kenner Parker Toys, which included things like Play-Doh, Monopoly, and Care Bears. Tonka ultimately became a division of Hasbro in 1991, but not before releasing their 1988 Willow line. I mean, come on, this was 1988, not 1908. It was almost the 90s! These were plastic figures on metal bases, echoing the premise of Dungeons & Dragons board game figures. Perhaps those in charge of the toy line thought children could use these Willow pieces within their games and inspire Willow game scenarios. But this toy line seemed more like some gaming pieces without a real game to belong to. So these were primarily sold as individual carded figures, and whereas the figure itself may not be so glamorous, the packaging is actually quite. On the front, we have this beautiful array of character portraits surrounding the edge of the card, with the logo on the top and the character name below. This really is some of the most beautiful art I've ever seen on toy packaging, and you really don't see things like this anymore. He-Man was another great example of packaging art, Dino Riders was another one. On the back here, we have an actual image of the character in the movie that the figure is depicting. It's a really great touch, along with a little write-up and bio on the character. I know in some toy lines that are based on movies and cartoons, the figures actually don't really resemble the figure itself in the movie. So I really do appreciate how they did try to go for movie accuracy in this line. 3 collector sets were also available, which essentially was a box set with 3 figures, which were also available individually as single carded figures as well. And then there's the big mama of this toy line, the Eborsisk, or as I've been pronouncing it for years, Eborsisk. We'll get to this guy in a little bit, but obviously this guy was not able to fit on a card, so he actually had his own big box, and the artwork on that is so beautiful. It's probably one of the nicest boxes I've ever seen in terms of toy packaging. So let's take a closer look at these figures. There were 19 figures in total in the toy line, along with 3 exclusive sets and a Nestle mail-in promo. Within this core Willow line, we have 13 of these mini figures, and they are all made of plastic, but the protruding pieces like the swords are made of a much softer plastic for obvious reasons, so they don't break off so easily. So we have the Death Dog, definitely a really cool piece. It's one of my probably favorites in the line. This troll with oversized troll hands. Mad Mardigan, who actually does kind of look like Val Kilmer. I think they did a pretty good job on that sculpt. Sorsha, who looks kind of like a man. The evil Queen Bavmorda. General Kale, who looks more like General White Monkey Face Man. Seriously, he looks like he has a monkey face. Eric Thaubea. I just knew him as Eric. I didn't know his last little ditty there was Thaubea. The High Aldwin, who looks pretty cool. A Nockmar Lieutenant. A Nockmar Warrior. A Rebel Trooper. And 2 versions of Willow, one with a baby and one without. I actually have both of these versions of Willow from the core set. I actually have it on a card back. It's in the mail still. I was hoping that would be here for this video, but I got very impatient waiting for it to arrive in the mail, so I just decided to do this video without it. And if you've noticed the metal bases, you'll see that the evil characters actually have a dark colored metal base, and all of the good characters have this kind of a creamy brownie color. Then we have our 5 horse figures whose riders' legs can actually clip into the sides of the saddle. Most of the time on eBay, these horse figures are sold without their little metal stands, but you definitely want to get them because it really helps them stand, because without them, okay, it stood that time, but usually it's kind of hit or miss if they will stand or not. And their stand also allows them the ability to be kind of posed. They can be up in this kind of a neigh, I don't know what that pose is called, like that neigh when they're on their hind legs pose, or they can just be kind of galloping like this. So we have Sorsha, Mad Mardigan, a Nockmaar warrior, General White General Kale, and Eric Thaubeya. And finally, the best part of this line, the impressive Ibasisk figure. George Lucas used a combination of both Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, the names of 2 film critics, to name this creature. And General Kale was actually named after the film critic Pauline Kael, who said that watching Star Wars was like taking a pack of kids to the circus. This 2-headed evil dragon is so impressive and is such a random oddity in this line. Measuring just under 10 inches, this guy is perfectly scaled to these 3-inch figures and looks incredibly accurate to his depiction in the movie. His skin has a scaly pattern to it. He's got this moss-like fur growth on the back here, a beautiful head sculpt, nice paint job, and a bit of little feeties on the side here, and the neck is able to actually swivel all the way around. Movement! So these were all the figures in the core Willow set, but there were also 4 exclusives. There were 3 Sears exclusives. There was the Castle Catapult set with a differently painted Rebel Trooper, a Chase Chariot set with a differently painted Nockmaar Lieutenant, and a Nockmaar Mangonel set with a differently painted Nockmaar Warrior figure. And the last exclusive, well, also the last Willow figure in general, is a Willow figure, and he's just painted differently. He's exactly like the core Willow figure, except his clothes are differently painted. The paint on these guys has really held up well after, what, 30 plus years? With every figure I have seen, obviously they are prone to, like any other toy, to paint being rubbed off or nicked off, but there's absolutely no bubbling, no flaking, no crackling on these guys, which is really awesome. So as a collector, and coming from a practical perspective back in the day in the 80s where there was things like, He-Man figures, Ninja Turtle figures, etc. Yeah, these figures are pretty bad. They kind of look like bootleg figures in a way. But you know what? It really doesn't matter, because I promise you, give these figures to a kid back in the day and they would have no problem letting their imagination run wild and having a lot of really fun, kind of scenarios and playtime with these guys. And they look to me more like game pieces without a game, but because they are so odd, because they are so unique, I feel like I just love them even more because of that. So in terms of value, rarity, and pricing, you can find these guys no problem on eBay for decent prices loose. Anywhere from, $15 each US, including shipping and all that jazz, all the way to something like $30 for a horse and a stand. But there are lots and lots of people out there selling multiple figures in bundles for great deals. You can find the Ibasisk no problem on eBay. He pops in and out every month. You can even get his box pretty easily too. It's just with his box, he's about $200 plus US dollars. So he's a little bit more pricey, obviously, with his box. But if you're really, hardcore and you want this figure, you'll really have no problem trying to find him. The holy grails of this line, though, are definitely the 3 Sears exclusive sets. I've never seen one for sale. And mind you, trying to find one with all those little loose pieces included would be very, very difficult to find. My opinion on the Willow toy line is that the value of these guys is going to be going up. It was confirmed this year that Ron Howard and the writer of Solo are actually in negotiations for a sequel series to the 1988 Willow for Disney+. More advertisement for Willow, more people wanting Willow nostalgia. I think the Ibasisk will be harder to find, and so will carded figures of Willow himself, and also some of the horse figures might be kind of hard to find as well. That is my prediction! And just a side note, in 1995, Chris Claremont and George Lucas actually published the very first book from the Chronicles of the Shadow War trilogy, called Shadow Moon. Then there was Shadow Dawn and Shadow Star. It's actually a continuation of the 1988 Willow movie, and for the life of me, I can't get through it. I've been listening to the audiobook for the last 2 months. I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. I can't get into it. I kind of don't really like it. So I'm just gonna pretend that maybe the Willow continuation books don't really exist. back hurts so much from trying to stay in frame. So in the comments down below, please let me know if you are a Willow fan. Did you ever have these toys when you were young? And what do you think of these toys in general? And have you also read the Shadow War trilogy books from the Willow continuation series? What do you think of them? Have you read them all? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Because I'm having a really hard time getting through them. And what do you think of a possible Willow series on Disney Plus? It's kind of weird. So please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I come out with new videos every week. Come check me out on social media and help support the channel on Patreon. So thank you guys so much for watching and stay legendary.